Hello everyone from the Florence School of Regulation. Many thanks for waiting and welcome to the first webinar from the FSR Energy Innovation Series. As you might already know, the Florence School of Regulation recently launched a brand new area dedicated to energy innovation, policy and regulation. And today we have with us, as you can see, the director of the area, Miguel Vazquez, who will moderate the session and introduce you very soon, hopefully, our special guest and this very special topic, which is bioenergy.
Hello to all of the people here. I saw that we have 30 participants. The title of my presentation is Knowledge Networks and Technology Frontiers. The name, why the name Knowledge Networks? It's because, unfortunately, and fortunately, for the good, for the bad, bioenergy now is part of a knowledge networks. I don't know if it's good. When I think in the window and solar energy, we know that you have a lot of learning path is very complicated, but not as complicated as bioenergy. Windy is less. So there are some advantages to be a very complex system, but in the other side, investors are not comfortable to put some risks and stakes in some technologies that takes a long time to give some sound results. And that is the case of bioenergy. We now start with this first slide. Okay, the colors, we pay attention on the solar, is the green one. And you see this is a projection, is data from Berkeley. Berkeley has a annual meeting. What had at the time of BP at Berkeley, they had an annual meeting about bioenergy. They changed it to value chain nowadays. Nowadays is not my bioenergy, it's a value chain. And they included bioenergy in the subject of value chain. At that time, Professor Gordon Hauser and Papineau, they do a very interesting research, and then they make some scenarios, previous scenarios to give some basis for the investigation. And then we see that at that time, solar was much more skyrocketing, much more performant than windy technology that at that time was not as important. And you saw an inflection. We can see an inflection in bioenergy. That is the biofuels. That is the green one. Okay. So they tried, but in general, all these alternative technologies, as I mentioned, emergent technologies from the year 2003. We have nothing before this. So it's a very good news. Today is an interesting day because we are doing this meeting about bioenergy, and the prices, petroleum prices go up and break the level of $80. Okay, so it's interesting to think about when you decide that, I give up, bioenergy is not interesting, bioenergy is not a good area to invest, and then you have these fluctuations in prices, and then to stand up on prices is very risky too. Okay, you have for a long-term perspective, bioenergy is a kind of technology that needs, as solar, a long-time perspective. Okay, go to the next. How do I go to the next? Yeah. Well, first question is, what is bioenergy? There's a lot of areas. I try to show up some of them, but by a second generation was the star. The main star is second generation. Okay, playing the role because there are many reasons that the second generation improved the system. You don't have to go through a deep novelty. I was talking about the United States decision to go through the corn ethanol, generating a lot of discussion and studies about not only the effects on the environment, but the effects on price food. So they generate a new problem. When you try to solve one, this is complexity. Okay, I hate this neoclassical economics. They said that everything is equilibrium, because what I see, whether it's any solution that you try, the remuneration pattern, any solution that you try, you generate new problems. And then in the United States, when they decide to go through energy autonomy and energy enough sufficiency, I don't know. Sometimes you have sorry for the word, but when they try to do this energy policy and they pursue this in a long run perspective, they said that they are getting the food from the mouth of the poverty for the poor people. So they generated what they call trilemma. Sometimes they forget the fact that growers in agriculture, they love high prices. They lived with low prices. So when then you generate some value in their chains, you motivate them to produce more. And they have possibilities to increase productivity in agriculture. And this happened not only in the United States, but open the space for Brazilian sports in corn and generate an increase growing in corn productivity in Brazil. There are this complex effect that if you are not economist, you never take in account. So you say, Miguel.
Just just a question because it was asked and I think it's interesting. Can you explain a bit second generation, first generation?
Yes, I'm going to do that. So I'm talking about the history that the United States decided to go through to corn ethanol. Corn ethanol, we can consider first generation, adding one operation more, one step more, that's saccharification. It's not easy. It's a more complicated step. Brazilians do not need to do this when produce ethanol with sugarcane. So it opens the space for more research, more investigation, more thermodynamical equilibrium, but they produce basically ethanol from the juice. So juice with saccharification, but juice. So this is considered first generation. Second generation has a different goal. It's just a little bit more complicated. Then you see here, this is the sequence of second generation. You know that you have now much more steps and very complicated steps because they are not decomposable. There are, at some extent, there are some modularity involved. It then is complex system too. Because if you have many alternatives of pretreatment, for example, for using heat, and can you try to use pretreatment, other systems of pretreatment and enzymes, for example, or to prepare the system of pretreatment to use enzymes in the next step. All the pretreatment and enzymes are different technological systems that are connected. So your decision in pretreatment is a different decision, and you have enzyme, but they are connected. So when you see this apparent linear chain, you see a very complicated decisions that you have to take. For giving a solid example, what's happening in Brazil with Grambio. Brazil is a very strange country because we don't have innovation in the industry, but sometimes the government or investors put a lot of money in some radical innovations, and then they decide to do second generations in Alagoas and producing ethanol. In large scale ethanol, is a few examples in the world that you have an attempt to produce large scale ethanol of second generation. And the problem is exactly here in the green. The pretreatment and the effects of corrosion was not a problem for scientists or a problem for engineers, a problem for chemical engineers, but mostly a problem for people that build the equipment in a large scale, because it's a problem of scaling up. When they do this in lower scale, they don't have any problem. They produce second generation easily. But then when you try to scale up and need the same 130,000 tons of ethanol per year, that's not amazing, but it's considerable. You face some problems that going to be you face it. Okay, so this is not easy. This is innovation. It's not an innovation. It's many steps of innovation, and then you have the same characteristics. You have a network, not a scientific network related to all these steps. And then you have not only a scientific network, you have patents, different assignees of patents related of all. And some guys, like Mascon, for example, in the United States, Lin, this guy has some patents. Bruce Day, another guy that comes frequently to Brazil, has another bench of patents. Some firms have patents. You have a lot of patents of different steps, and you need to combine. You generate these problems they call the tragedy of commons. Okay, the anti-commons, the problem that you have to negotiate with the patents assignees the rights to use their technology if you consider their technology superior and adequate to your system. Okay, then we are in a situation on second generation is viable. Second generation the prices are going down, and there is a clear learning curve, but some industrial problems to scaling up persists. See in this map is I have to run a little bit. Here you see that the United States is a very organized country. I suggest people that's interested in to study biomass and contracts. The work of Madhu Khanna from Illinois University is amazing work, and then they map all the potential of biomass in the United States for second generation. And then Madhu made some ideas of what would be the contracts that could be optimal for these different regions, different patterns. It's very interesting. We know that they are much miles and miles ahead of us in this kind of system. Opportunities, I have to, yeah. To have an idea, the main concept, I know that today in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it's not easy to explain all this complexity, but I will try. You see some scales of productivity. The idea is to use these residuals. All of the concepts, in my view, there are two key concepts in bioenergy nowadays. One is to use biomass and try to reduce the price of biomass. Secondly, and I include in biomass waste, all of types of residuals and waste. Even the urban waste, urban garbage, that is very important to solve. So this is a kind of, it's not a GPT, a general purpose technology, but the developments that you do in agriculture, the developments that you do, for example, in sugarcane industry, sugarcane chain, you have some spillovers to other systems. So this is my point, that you have to continue to pursue the technological and scientific development in bioenergy. You see that the productivity, you can multiply by 4 the productivity in liters by hectare. You are saving land. This idea, this is very important to United States to solve this, the thing that I call a trilemma, that you are put in harm food system. Your negative effects in food system is to improve productivity. Say you go from this point up to this point, mostly 4 times fold, okay? Increasing productivity when we include second generation energy, and the system that they propose is to use of energy cane. Energy cane is a reality in Brazil. The advantage of energy cane that you can cultivate energy cane in semi-arid zones. So you generate opportunities, new opportunities for business. That's why they put the Gran Bio facilities in Alagoas, in northeast Brazil, a very poor region, and energy cane is a possibility to increase the productivity in liters by hectare for ethanol production. So you have my concept here. You have a lot of possibilities to improve the system, and the system is still improving. In Brazil, for example, we have a lot of criticism. Said, no, second generation is down. Even ethanol is down. I will buy a gasoline car. Here we have flex fuel cars that can operate with two systems. It's not a very efficient system. You have a lot of technology to improve. There are some thermodynamical barriers. There are some physical limits, I admit, but there are some margin for improvement. And then you have to pursue this. The fact that all the sugarcane mills now are providing energy for the system by cogeneration. And then now we saw that electric hydroelectricity is a completely flaw, is a problem nowadays in Brazil, because with the global warming that exists, I think that exists, is generating there are some repeated droughts happening in Brazil. Each 4 years you have a serious drought in the whole country. So the possibility to use these alternative systems, wind, solar, and bioenergy, are very, very important, mostly when you have energy cane that is drought resistant. Okay? Okay, another subject important, not only for first or second generation, but both, is the possibility to capture carbon. Okay? I'm not giving a speech to make some propaganda of sugarcane, because I know that sugarcane, the problem are the mill owners. There is a lot of economic problems. Economic systems in Brazil has a lot of problem. They are not serious. That is the problem. But sugarcane technically is one of the most efficient systems to capture CO2 and to help to promote CO2 reductions. And you see the data. Emission reductions, this is the recent data, is an international panel, is not calculated by Brazilians. Okay, and we are comparing corn ethanol. You see the system in corn ethanol and lignocellulose ethanol. There is the idea that when you go through all the value chain, pursuing the second generation up to using lignocelluloses, not only sugarcane, you have the best system to capture CO2. That's the idea. Okay, but when you see here, you have we saw that in Brazil, for example, there is an advantage that you have all the system implanted. Okay, logistics, mills. The mills are facing some problems because they invest a lot in the past, and now the less efficient, the mistakes that they made when investing 10 years ago is, with the crisis, is showing some effects. And so you have some mills going to bankruptcy. There's some concentration. Okay, it's normal in crisis. But this is a comparative scenario when you have risk-averse scenario, when people like mill owners are very risk averse. What can I do? What can they do? They can promote new energy cycles in mills, ranking system, not only these traditional systems to use energy, improve extraction methods. There's a lot of heterogeneity. This word for Brazilians is terrible, okay? Sorry for this. You have a lot of heterogeneity. It's a very important word in economics nowadays. So in extraction methods, there are traditional extraction methods, and there are a lot of new technologies available not new, but they improved a lot. Improved ethanol performance in cars. And one option is when you go through second generation, you burn lignin. It's very conservative. It's an idea that some companies, for example, Brazil was the largest producers of pulp and paper in the world. And then the Suzano, one of the most important pulp and paper company in the world, decided to go through the second generation in forestry. And then one option is to burn lignin. Okay? When you try to go more innovative, what do you do? Firstly, you have the breeding methods, not only traditional breeding methods, but using GMO. This GMO is not a problem for the environment because it's confined in laboratories. So you use this only for intermediate steps. That is, I think that I hate in people that try to rule out technologies and control technologies because they know everything what's going to help in the future. So let's to control GMOs and let's to rip GMO out of the humanity. And now we discover that the most important part of using GMOs is in research and is in producing intermediate steps to achieve some innovation. And you have in pretreatment, as I mentioned, heat pyrolysis. You have ionic pretreatment. That ionic pretreatment is so expensive today, using some chemical products that are very efficient but are very, very expensive. So you have a frontier to reduce this cost, and the system is a new opportunity for pretreatment to prepare hemicelluloses and lignocelluloses to the enzymatic action and for preparing them to fermentation. You have new strains. Now these new strains, one of the most I put avian. I think that I'm say I'm buying plain. I don't know. Avian is mistaken. Please, it's it's a crazy thing. Okay, I put. I'm talking about airplane fuel. And then you have to development. I saw yesterday and I thought, wow, what I'm going to, and I forgot to correct. And new strains for drop-in. What is the idea of drop-in? Okay, that you try to replace, for example, kerosene that is by petroleum, and then the commercial companies are forecasting a serious crisis because they are very sensible about the price of fuels. The price of fuels are very important to them. So they are forecasting an increase in prices and a serious crisis in the commercial airplane systems. So one option is to use bioenergy. And then you have to develop new strains. It's not a matter to use Saccharomyces cerevisiae like that you use to do beer, but they replace them by new strains, and then you need a lot of research. Other important area that you can develop is building blocks by lignin. All of this is a very complex systems of cooperation in science and a very complex systems of give some to patent systems a lot of complexity. Even people that are patenting not only to block new competitors. This just happened now. Patent ticket is now operating. Okay? The system that you not have only the patents to protect your invention, but you have a bunch of patents that to protect to deter enter. Okay? New entrants. And then building blocks by lignins. There is a lot of criticism that sometimes when you try, you have this kind of technology push. In the past, when I started studying innovation, there was this kind of divide between technological push and demand pull. And so we decide by the works of Giovanni Dozzi, all of these guys, and part of them Italian guys, they said, no, it's ridiculous to separate technology push and demand pull. And nowadays, we heard, when you interview people from the companies involved in innovation in this field, part of them said, oh, when you have this technology push and you decide to go to the second generation and you generate lignin, you decide not to burn lignin, but you use lignin for chemical, to produce chemical products, you are pushing, you are trying to do things that are not economically feasible. Then, not because you have the raw materials, in this case, lignin compounds. That is a very complex number of molecules that you have feasibility to compete with synthesis, chemical synthesis. This is one of the problems, that you have few products that are economically viable, and then if you have 10, 12 or 100 facilities produce second generation and generate lignin, you have competition, and the price of the inputs are very low, and so they generate some feasibility, but sometimes the price of the final product is lower, and not the economic viability of these investments is not good. Algae, it's an interesting thing, because we have in Brazil some firms that producing algae, not bioenergy, but cosmetics using algae. But Petrobras succeed to produce hydrocarbons. That is interesting because you have much more carbons than oxygen, so you have much more complex molecules and richer in carbon. It means that richer in capturing CO2 and with a lot of potential for generating energy and other products. But the problem is, you succeed to produce a bunch of hydrocarbons, you don't know exactly what you're going to do with this. So the Petrobras nowadays is able to produce algae in northeast Brazil, profiting with the sun that is abundant there, natural resource. But you have a production of hydrocarbons that you don't know exactly what you're going to do with them, because what would be the scale to justify refineries dedicated to these products? Okay, so you see that you have a lot of complex problems to decide. I know that there is no one clever guy to solve all of these things. I hate when then you try one solution for all of this. There are many types of investors. Some of them are risk averse, some then trying to go to innovation. Okay, here are an idea of the products that you can produce, and then other branch, Braskem now is succeed to commercialize ethylene and propylene to firms. Okay, using not only very green route, but the raw material is sugarcane. So it's contributing to produce plastics that are you manage to try to get rid of them, but at some extent they are contributing to reduce CO2 emissions, because they are capturing carbon to produce ethylene and propylene and butanol. And that is one of the most important downstream products: acrylic acid, polyacrylic acid, succinic acid. Well, yes, biodiesel, jet fuel that was mentioned, not avian, electricity, that is now in Brazil a very important reality. Okay, this is the first scenario. Okay, I skip this. That's not interesting.
I think, Jose Maria, we could jump to conclusions and try to open the Q&A like in 2-3 minutes.
Okay, so now I think that one interesting scenario, this is a little bit complex, is a synthesis that I have shown. These are the possibilities, and when they study alpapinoid ulcer, they in the stake of the high petroleum prices. They consider that all of these transitions are viable. And we saw that they, in 10 years, I think that is today, well, many of these innovations are still in place. So they're not make some excessive wrong forecasting. But we don't know if in 5 years we are going to have all of these ideas. But this is very important idea. I think that China is thinking about this. Not a big, monster biorefinery, but a lot of situations that you have a small and flexible biorefinery combined with and profiting the grids that you developed with solar and other technologies. Okay, just this is the complexity. Solar is less complex, but there is a frontier to developing too. Okay, in the systems, we don't imagine how complex is this. Just to give some figures, we're trying to make second generation ethanol competitive if we integrate the whole chain. And then go through, we have a very interesting possibilities to combine electric cars with ethanol using this kind of cells. You say that in some countries that you don't have ethanol, they don't want to import ethanol to use here, but some countries like Brazil and the United States, that is a very interesting solution to batteries. Okay. I pay attention for the fact that in sugarcane, Brazil is have an important role in generate knowledge. In corn research, United States is leading, but at some extent, main players in the scene nowadays are China, Brazil, United States, and Germany is important for many other regions. Okay, reasons. Germany is always important. Okay, this is just to give an idea that patents is improving, but you have some crisis from 2014 with the idea that the prices, petroleum prices are low. It has some negative effect on patents, but at some extent, the system is now bioenergy is based on biotechnology. Is not based on experimental and traditional knowledge. That is very important. Okay, this is in waste. You have a new scene in waste when you have many possibilities. We did this very cute graphic with the 3 trajectories, and then we find this is the most important patterns nowadays in waste, and we find the most we saw that you have now many different actors. You don't have the concentration in patents in the hands in the 3 different trajectories in the hands of just one firm, one assignee. There is a lot of different. This is a kind of trajectory. I don't have time to explain, but the assignees that are involved in this scene, there's a lot of a great number of them. So there are competition. So the system is open now for waste. Okay, and then conclusions. Okay, what idea? This is EA propositions. It's not mine, but I agree entirely with this. That's why I put it here. Promote short-term deployment of mature options. You don't have to make some strange choices that you decide to go to high technology and then you let the lower traditional technologies down because there are some combination between them. You have to keep up stimulating development and deployment of new technologies, promote the necessary for each country feedstock sustainability, generates capacity to attract investments that not depend on big banks like BNDES, like in Brazil. And in Brazil, just to finish, use some creativeness generating traditional systems of willingness to pay. That name is RenovaBio. There's a system that if you contribute producing advanced fuels like Brazilian ethanol by sugarcane, second generation ethanol and biogas and kind of things, you are generating titles, financial titles, whose name is CBIOS, and then you can negotiate these titles in secondary markets. The system is now improving, and then they consider this one of the key political measures to spur bioenergy in the country. Thank you. Sorry to take more time than I planned.